Hi, I'm Jordan Bradshaw, and this is the Jordan Bradshaw. Hi everyone, I'm Jordan Bradshaw. This is the Jordan Bradshaw. Today we're here with the legendary producer, Mr. Danny Jones. Danny, you've been doing this for a long time now, I know. Tell us a little bit more about your career. What all have you gotten to do?
Well, I'm an engineer, producer, drummer, singer, and songwriter. And I've been doing this, as I like to refer to, about half of forever.
Half of forever?
Yeah, so I got started actually, pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
We had mentioned earlier, I think my first, in junior high, I was playing in a band. We won first place in a talent contest at our school, and we actually went into a studio, recorded, and they actually played one of our songs on the radio. So I got my first airplay at age 14.
Wow.
And yeah.
What was that like, being so young and being able to hear like your band and your sound going on the radio?
Oh, it was, it's hard to remember exactly, except, you just went with the flow.
Yeah.
I actually didn't realize at the time, how really cool that really was. It was cool, and the band was popular, so I got invited to lots of parties.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But, it was a lot of fun. I look back and, we were probably pretty terrible, when you think about it. But
can't be that terrible to be on the radio.
I guess. We recorded 2 songs. They would only play one of them. Oh. So maybe that other one, wasn't so great. But, it was a lot of fun. So it's a good thing that we're naive when we're young. And so that doesn't stop us from just, pushing forward in whatever it is that we're trying to do.
Well, see, the industry was so much different back then, because nowadays I feel like it's pretty easy for anybody to just really get a DAW going and then be able to record like a quick demo, get that, with the right connections, you're able to get that on the radio. What was your process like to be able to get music put on the radio and put out there?
Well, that was easier because I grew up in a small town.
Yeah.
And more people could do that back then. We didn't actually press up records. We just had a tape and we took it down there. I don't even know who paid for the sessions.
Yeah.
One of the guys in the band and I remained friends, through the years, and we both talk, and neither one of us know who actually paid for the session to do that. So I still don't know, but it was easier to do. You could take and then even later on when I started doing some records, you could go into a radio station, and some of them would, they would give a listen, and they would play it. So it was just very different. Radio was, much bigger thing,
right?
Than it is today. But then, and today it's so difficult unless you're with an independent radio station, because all of the big ones, you better have your connections,
right?
Or you don't even get considered.
Do you remember what the name of the song was? That first song you had on the radio?
Oh, My Heart Aches.
My Heart Aches.
Yeah, I think that was written by Mike Coleman, who was one of our singers at the time.
What kind of like style was it? I'm assuming rock.
Yeah, but that was a ballad.
Oh, okay.
We did 2 songs. The other one was a song we did by a group called the Trashmen called Bird Dance Beat.
Bird Dance Beat.
It was, you'd have to look that up.
Yeah.
And interestingly, years later, I was in Minneapolis doing finishing up a record with a band up there, and I found out that the studio I was working in was the studio that record was cut at.
Wow.
And as soon as I found that out, I got on the phone and called my buddy Scott. I said, "You're never going to guess where I am right now.
Yeah.
I'm in the studio where the Trashmen cut, their record."
Yeah, that's a full circle moment.
Oh, it was kind of a biggie.
Yeah. I can imagine.
I got a goosebump just, it's nice thinking about, those old times.
So, did you do the drumming on the record?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So you've gotten to work with like a handful of really amazing individuals. Was there anybody that you were starstruck by, like getting to work with?
Well, let's see. Gosh, probably a bunch.
Yeah, because I mean, you've only worked with some of the greatest.
Well, I guess probably well, when you talk about my career, I mean, some of it was drumming, and some of it was being behind a console, and when I was still fairly young, but I was an adult barely, but I had a job where I was backing up all of these artists, so I played with the Drifters and the Coasters and the Platters, and sharing the stage with Little Richard, Fats Domino, Bill Haley and the Comets. I mean, talk about an education in American rock and roll. And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And the first time I worked this thing, I can't remember who I was playing with, except the other act who was with us on this was Jackie Wilson.
Wow.
And and Jackie was so nice. And I just thought, gosh, man, this is getting in the big time.
Yeah.
And so I was like a kid, and you want to be cool. I'm the professional, but inside, I'm this little kid from Arkansas doing backflips going, I can't believe they let me in here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always like an interesting feeling getting to be in the room with like people like that where you're just like, am I really to this level?
Yeah. And again, I'm very thankful, but some of the time, it's now probably the biggest artist that I was first in the studio with was Etta James.
Oh, wow.
And the thing that I love so much, and to this day loved about Etta, was I was like the new guy there. This was, I just gotten a job working for Alan Toussaint in New Orleans. And this was the first project I worked on with Alan, was Etta. So everybody there, I mean, these were all like New Orleans people, with the exception of Etta. So everybody knows everybody. So everybody knows I'm the new guy. And Etta's like, she was like mother hen.
Yeah.
And she's telling me things to get in good with Alan. And I'm going, this is Etta James. And she's going out of her way. This is her record. She's going out of her way, to be nice to me and try to help me out in that situation. And so many of these great artists that I have worked with were really nice people. I mean, you hear stories about people, and I'm sure lots of them are true. And I've seen some of those and been involved in some of those stories where artists were not always the nicest, but those were the exception. Because generally, the better and certainly the more successful the artist, actually, the easier they were, to work with.
Right. Yeah, we had talked a little bit about this beforehand.
Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, you were saying beforehand just a little bit about working with some artists like that have been very, just forward and very like nice, and they're easy to work with, and that those tend to be the best artists that.
Yeah, I guess, the more successful the artist, I guess the more confident they are, in what they're doing. But every time I work with someone like that, they let me do my job, would ask me my opinion. I did learn really early on, it's best, if you have an opinion, keep it to yourself, unless someone asks. And then if they do ask you, if you have an opinion, give it. I don't think it's a good idea to just make it up on the spot.
Right.
You could go, oh, yeah, that's great. And they go, well, I thought it sucked.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, I didn't really. But so, be truthful about it. But, depending on what your position is there, and a lot of those, I was the engineer, and I'm supposed to, get everything that they're doing and translate it down to whatever recording format we're on. And in those early days, of course, it was all analog. And, occasionally my opinion would be asked, and if I had an opinion, I would give it. But if they don't ask for my opinion, I didn't give it. That was really not my place.
Right. Always, what is it? Listen first, ask or talk second, right?
Yeah.
Or something along those lines, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was also heard someone say, we have two ears and one mouth.
Exactly.
So,
that's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah, so, be careful, with what you say.
Now, when you're in the studio, like you've touched on, you produce, you've engineered, and you've also been, a session drummer as well. What is the difference in mindset that you have to come in with for each one of those different roles?
Well, depending on what you're doing, you're either a chief or an Indian.
Right.
And I feel like I can be both, not always, at the same time. If I'm coming into a session, I mean, I get hired sometimes as a session drummer, and I think one of the reasons I get hired, I mean, hopefully I'm a decent drummer, but also I know a lot about making records. So when I'm playing drums, I'm thinking, even when I'm playing drums, I'm thinking the final product. How do these parts fit, in the song? And if I have a producer who says, okay, but I want you to go this direction, then boop, I have to, turn on a dime and do that. And that's part of the job. I've seen people that, took offense to that. And it's like, those people didn't work that much because you can't do that. This is not about, if I'm hired as an Indian, so to speak, and that's just the terminology. Don't anybody take offense to that.
Right.
Then I'm there to deliver what they want, for the song. So I come up with what I think are parts. But if they say, I want you to go a little different direction, then I do my best to change that direction. If I am the chief, so to speak, like the producer on a session, then it's up to me to, and I'm with the artist, to get what the artist is looking for as far as, is a direction, and then just make sure that all the folks who are on the session, that we all know where we're going, we go in the same direction. At the same time, being a chief doesn't mean it's a dictatorship.
Right.
Because I don't like to work like that,
right.
At all. And if someone has an idea, I want to hear it. It's my job to make sure the idea comes. I don't care where it comes from. It can be my idea, but it certainly doesn't have to be. And sometimes I think I have great ideas, and sometimes they're just ideas.
Yeah.
But if they're ideas that can spur something that gets out of, the artists or the musicians, something that's even better, then I've done my job.
Yeah. So what is it that you feel like makes a really great producer? Because nowadays I feel like the term producer is so loose. It could be somebody who's, behind the console, making the music completely. Maybe they're just, pressing the record button. What is it that you feel like is the ideal producer role?
Well, I think there's different kinds of producers.
Yeah.
There are people who, like you say, they can sit at home, with their laptop, and anybody can say, "Hey, man, I'm a producer."
Right.
And you go,
right.
"Yeah, okay, great." And I'm not putting down sitting at home on a laptop, because some people come up with some great things, but I think it depends on what I feel like. I'm a little different producer depending on the artist. Whatever an artist needs. I mean, if I have an artist that, whether it's a solo artist or if it's a band, if they really excel at something in the songwriting process, then I don't need to contribute as much in that area because they're really strong in that. But if it's an area that maybe they're not good at vocal arranging, or they need help with phrasing, as far as singing, then those are areas that I need to jump into. If there's an area that they're not strong in, and maybe I'm not as strong as we need to be, then I look for someone else to come involved into the project. You either hire an arranger or a certain musician, and this is not uncommon at all, just to supplement any, I guess I'll use the word deficiencies, that we might have in making, the record. But I want to get, all these years myself as being a musician, and, I played in bands and had record deals. I went into the studio, and even though I've had a lot of wonderful experiences early on, some of them weren't. I went into some studios where the engineers were not very friendly.
Yeah.
And they were sort of condescending, and, maybe I didn't have the greatest band in the world, but if it wasn't, they certainly let me know. And, I've never forgotten that feeling, which is a horrible feeling, You go in and, we go in the studio and, we're sort of bearing our souls anyway. And most of us are somewhat insecure, in what we do. So that being said, I'll go into this. I feel like, I will bend over backwards to make someone feel comfortable in the studio. I've taken that on, ever since I started engineering, many, many years ago, because I remembered some of those situations that I was in. And whenever people were not that nice, I didn't do my best work. So I try to make people feel comfortable, and let's try this. It's okay to make a mistake. The mistake police don't jump out from the walls and flog you.
Yeah.
It's just, the studio, I'm the safety net. It's like we can do try anything. And if we fail, and sometimes you will fail at that, and it's like, okay, great. We erase that. We move on. But then sometimes that can lead to really good things to come out of it. So I would rather somebody try something and just, bomb than to play safe. If you play it safe, it's not believable. And if it's not believable, you don't make an emotional connection with a listener. You just cut another bunch of notes, to another song that comes off like this. It's like, you better tell a story. If you want other people to listen, you better tell a story. It's got to be a good story. You could take a dictionary. Dictionary's got all the words.
Right.
How many of us sit up late at night reading the dictionary?
Right.
So that's the way I look at music, in general.
Yeah. I got to say I feel like that's a very, like all the best drummers that I've ever met kind of sharing that mentality, because I see drummers, you really got to drive the bus. And you guys are the ones who really tend to be the most tasteful, I feel like, when it comes to songwriting. Just because you guys know exactly what to do to fit the song. Because I think that there are a lot of musicians out there who maybe want to chop out a little bit too much or want to do a little bit too extra with anything that they try to put out there, And especially when it's like in the studio, the drummers are the ones who are the most like militant about, making sure that they know exactly what fill is going to go where, and just being very tasteful with their craft. So I hear that a lot in like what you're talking about, which I think is great.
Well, for most songs, we are the foundation.
Exactly.
Being the drums, and then everything is built on top of that. And, now, and all the session guys know what I'm about to say, which is how they became session guys. It's a matter of, just like you said, choosing the right stuff that makes the foundation there, and hopefully there's enough interest in it that it keeps it interesting, but that you're not overplaying. If you don't leave room for the other instruments along the way, then it's just not going to be a nice feeling, balanced recording. If you're in a session and everybody's there, which hardly happens anymore, because there's always overdubs, and sometimes we do sessions with 2 or 3 people, and that's it, as opposed to 8 or 9 or 10 sessions where you're actually hearing everything that's going on. It's easier to hear what's going on, and what I mean by that is what to play. It's like, okay, I don't need to do anything there because the horns are doing this, or some other instrument is doing a fill, or has some kind of counter melody there. But if you go on and there's nothing happening in a section, well, maybe that's a good place for a pop 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 or ticka dot dot, or whatever kind of part that seems to be. And sometimes the parts can be really simple, and the simple ones quite often are the most effective. I've been hired to replace a few drummers.
Oh yeah,
with bands on their records. Yeah, which made me really popular. Yeah, with a couple of guys. But I asked this one producer friend in Memphis that I had worked with. He was cutting an album on this band, and there was a couple of songs that he said, this drummer is just not cutting it. So they called me in to do it. And I asked him later. I said, "Oh, how'd that turn out with the drummer?" And he said the producer laughed and he said, "Well, he listened to it and he said, oh, well, anybody can play that.
Yeah.
If I knew that's what you wanted, I'd have done that. That's just simple."
Yeah.
And we both got a laugh out of it. And yeah, rhythmically it was simple, but it's what worked.
It's what fits the song.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've also gotten to work with people like Stevie Ray Vaughn before, right?
Right.
What was it like working with him?
Well, I was actually hired as an assistant on that project. It had been going on. I wasn't supposed to be on it, at all, but the project had gone over time, and the assistant had a vacation planned.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, "Well, I could cancel my vacation." And they said, No, don't do that. We'll find someone. And I used to go to that. I worked at that studio from time to time anyway. And they said, "Hey, listen, you want to come in and assist on Stevie Ray Vaughn?" And I said, "Sure." Well, Stevie was, he was a big artist, but not like now.
Right.
And actually that album that I worked on was In Step, which was his largest, biggest selling album at that point. I'd heard some records on the radio, and I sort of expected to see, this aggressive guy. And I really didn't think too much about it. It was like, oh, okay, it's a session. It's work. So I showed up, and I actually wasn't prepared for how good he really was.
Yeah.
And we did, and everything that I worked on were his overdubs, his guitar overdubs on that record, because all the tracks had already been cut, so I wasn't there, when they were doing that. But and sometimes he would be in the control room playing, the amps out in the room. His amps, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
14 cabinets.
Wow.
It was like 7 little stacks,
Wow.
like too high, and it was the loudest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
In my life. But so sometimes he was out in the studio with it, and sometimes in the control room. But I remember at one point, we were setting up about the same distance from each other, as you and I are now, and I just remember thinking, "Good gosh, this guy is great."
Yeah.
I knew he was going to be good, but I also know how records are made sometimes. You do 5,000 overdubs and punch-ins and, compilation, tracks. And that wasn't done with him. And I just, I got goosebumps. There's only been a small handful of artists that I worked with that I really got goosebumps.
Yeah.
And he was one of them, and like I said, I actually was not prepared for that. That one caught me off guard.
Who else were some of those artists that really gave you the goosebumps when you were?
Oh, Etta James.
I can imagine Etta James would be.
Patti LaBelle.
Patti LaBelle, another name that I can imagine, definitely.
Mavis Staples.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so some of the greats, yeah.
Yeah. Boy, I've been really blessed. That's quite a little list.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I'm not even sure sometimes how to put that other than I was just very blessed, to get to be there.
Right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I always had or at least tried to always have a really good attitude. And I think in some respects that probably got me through my early days because, when we start out, none of us are really that good.
Right.
At what we do. And sometimes you get better by making mistakes. And boy, I've certainly, made my share of mistakes. But at the same time, even when I made mistakes, I think maybe my attitude or just the generosity of people said, we'll give him another chance. So I've survived and I'm still here.
So I'm curious, in like having such a long career, have you noticed like a difference maybe between like the way artists when you first started off treated the studio versus like now, and like maybe just different recording processes, maybe different ways that artists are writing?
Well, yeah, there's definitely, a change. What I find with some people, and I say some, it's hard to generalize, every situation, but I want people to perform. Don't come in and say, "Oh, can I just sing this?" And then, you can sample that and fly it in all these places. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
You're going to sing all of this. I said, I may end up doing that, but I want to make sure I have gotten the best out of you. So, I like to work people. And not for the sake of working. At the same time, if somebody comes in and they sing or they play and it's just like this wonderful performance, okay, I'm not blind to that. It's like, wow, that is great. I will say, you know what? We got that one. Can we try another one? Just to see what else, that we get. And sometimes we beat it and sometimes we don't. So I'm not against great first takes. But at the same time, it doesn't scare me not to take that. And sometimes, I've had an artist go, "Oh, well, yeah, that was the first take." And they want it to be first take and be, great. Yeah. And it's like, well, okay, but, I've got that. I mean, the wonderful thing about today is we have all these tracks.
Right.
In those thrilling days of yesteryear in analog, there were definite limits to what you did. So you couldn't do, 5 or 10 takes unless you were on some kind of a slave tape situation, and sometimes we did that, but most of the time, I didn't. So it gives us a chance to experiment a little bit more. I think people. I don't think the most successful people do this, but a lot of people just think, let me do as little as I can get away with, and then I'll fly it in on all these places, or let me play 4 bars of something and let's loop it. And I've done all of those things. It's not like I don't know how to do that, but that's like when all else fails. That's when you use those. But I think if you get and again, the performance is everything. Well, first of all, the song. The song better be great. If the song's not great, I don't want to say you're wasting your time, but sometimes.
Right.
Because even if it's a great performance, it's a great performance of a mediocre song.
Right.
So that's going to make a great record?
Yeah.
99.9 times,
yeah.
No, that doesn't work. So it's all about an emotional performance. And if you can make that performance happen, really quickly, that's great. Now, Patti LaBelle, use her for example. Patti warmed up 2 or 3 hours in her hotel room before she came to the studio. When she got to the studio, there's no warming up.
Right.
She's already done that. She's ready to sing. Those were like one takes.
Yeah.
But what we would do, though, we would go through and do several songs in a day, and then in a few days, we'd do the same thing again. And we'd pick and choose from that. And I think on that album, one song, I think, was a compilation of 2 different days of the song. But everything else was a complete performance, beginning of the song to the end of the song. And, she's obviously a great singer. But it's like whenever that emotion comes out, that's what you got to capture. Because, again, it's got to be believable. And if it's not, it's just a bunch of notes.
How are you able to get that out of maybe if an artist comes in and they're studio shy? Do you have any certain techniques or any ways that you try to coach that out of them?
I'm not sure that I have one size fits all, because everybody's a little different in what they do and what makes them tick.
Yeah.
I've seen things, you can talk about with an artist, if I don't feel we were getting the performance, okay, what are you singing about?
Yeah.
What are you trying to say? Are you telling this story? And you got to make me believe that you're doing this. It's not that you're just reading a book, that you're telling me a story that you want me to believe. And I remember one session, and I wasn't producing this one, but the singer just really wasn't delivering, and the producer says, because the producer had heard this group a lot, do lots of cover songs, and he said, sing this like so-and-so would sing this.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, oh, okay. And of course, he didn't sound like whoever so-and-so was. I don't remember who it was. But I started believing what he was doing because he was putting himself in a position of, I'm an actor now, and I'm acting as so-and-so, and this is going to be my delivery of this song like I think this particular artist would do. And that worked. And I remember thinking, wow, that was interesting. And that, in this situation, actually really worked.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because that's, to me, that was the bread and butter of Stevie Ray, especially. Every note that he played, you believed it, you know? He was able to do that.
I remember before we did one take, he said, hang on. And I'm watching him. He's sitting there, and he's like, he closes his eyes, and he thinks, I've already done that. And this went on for a couple of minutes. And then he said, okay, let's roll. And then he plays.
Wow.
He was going through this, and I mean, I can't read his mind, but what I thought was happening was he was trying to figure out what he was going to do. And I could see where he was, he'd shake his head no, because he was going through certain things. And then he actually said out loud, no, I've already done that.
Wow.
But, yeah.
Yeah.
He definitely was one of the greats.
Yeah.
And you know what? I was thinking this, as I mentioned earlier about this, maybe coming in this really aggressive personality, and he was not that at all. And, now everybody sees so much coverage on him that they know all of this, but, that stuff didn't exist when I worked with him, so I got to, experience it firsthand. I liked him.
Yeah.
He was a likable person to me. You didn't push him around. He went at his own pace. But boy, it was worth the wait.
Did he always dress like that? Was he still like kind of in that?
Nah.
He always had no. He more in a t-shirt and shorts, or
I don't remember shorts.
Yeah.
I don't remember specifically. What he wore, but it was not like I'm on stage.
The big, okay, yeah.
They weren't the big. Oh, he used to wear a little cap.
Yeah, he always had the hat, and it was all like flowy almost. I remember.
Yeah.
No,
I don't.
Not
on the
I've always
sessions
wondered that. Yeah, because there are some musicians who it's like when they step off stage, that's just what they wear. Yeah. And I've always wondered that about him. Same thing with Jimi Hendrix, if he dressed that way off stage too. So what got you first started on the production and engineering side? Did you started off, I'm taking it as more like a session drummer, and then you got into the production side?
Yeah, well, more even, I mean, I didn't find that many people that wanted to hire me as a session drummer. At that time, I was living in Memphis, and Memphis was just full of musicians who had all played on hit records. So I couldn't get people to want to take a chance on me when they knew they could hire so-and-so, and they knew what they were getting because the guy had already played on a bunch of hits. And even though I was going to play for free, and I didn't quite understand this at the time about, but I'll play for free. Yeah, but there's a session going on, and not everybody else is going to be there playing for free. And if the drummer blows it, you just wasted studio time. You wasted paying the other musicians. I understand that now. At the time, I sort of understood it, but not really. But I went in with a couple of guys. We put some money together, and we built a little studio in Memphis. And I had a band, and we were one of the main reasons we did this because we wanted to record, my band and record other artists. And one of my partners called me one day and said, "Hey, listen, I want you to." I'm producing this artist, and he said, I want you to help me produce it. So I went in, and I heard things, and I went, we need to make this sound better. So I started going through things that I thought would make it sound better in terms of sonically. And after a couple of times of doing this, I thought, oh, this is engineering. And I kind of like this. And I seem to have more people excited about my engineering than my drumming. I mean, there were lots of engineers, but not nearly as many engineers as drummers, during that time period. So I started doing more of that, and then the bug really hit me.
Yeah.
And it's like, I really like this.
Yeah.
So I just became extremely obsessed with it, and I had been doing a lot of touring, around the country, and I just really didn't want to do that anymore at that time. I mean, I'd done that for years, and for the most part, I loved it. But then it got to a point of sort of, if you're not a star and you're a sideman, unless you're just getting paid really, really well, playing with big stars, which I really wasn't, at that time, I thought, I don't know that I want to do that, and I really do like this engineering thing. So that's when I started engineering and kind of producing at the same time, with both. And then I had got to a point where the lease was coming up on the building that we had, and my landlord was tripling the rent.
Oh,
tripling
wow.
the rent.
Yeah.
And honestly, I was barely surviving as it was. I mean, I was not making any money. And it's like, okay, I can't handle this. I will not even be able to pay the rent. So he decided to close that down. But one of the groups that I had produced, their tapes, I mean, it was a band from Memphis, played a club in Tupelo, Mississippi, who played it for the club owner, who said, well, I have this friend in Nashville. So he sent this cassette to the guy in Nashville, who the day it got there, he had a friend visiting from Charlotte, North Carolina, who said, well, I have a guy in New Orleans that I know who was Marshall Sehorn, who was Alan Toussaint's partner. And so it went from Memphis to Tupelo to Nashville to Charlotte, North Carolina to New Orleans.
Yeah.
And Marshall called the band and said, listen, I'd like to sign you guys to a production deal. Come down and record in New Orleans. And the band leader said, great, we're interested. Would it be possible for us to bring the producer engineer we're working with in Memphis? And Marshall said, of course, he'd heard my work, and he said, well, yeah. He said, actually, I'm looking to hire an engineer. Do you think he might be interested in relocating? And he said, well, I don't know. I'll have to call him and see. But he called me, and I started looking up Alan Toussaint, and I went, good gosh. I said, yeah, I'll relocate. So they flew me down and said, hey, look, hang out for a couple of days. He said, you get to know us, we get to know you, and we'll go from there. He said, I'll send you a round-trip ticket. He said, I'll put you up in a hotel and make sure that you don't starve.
Wow, yeah.
So I went down to New Orleans, and the first day there, I mean, I'm just hanging out at the studio. First of all, I'm blown away. There was a string session going on. There's all these expensive Neumann microphones that I was not privy to in my more humble, setting in Memphis. But then I go back to the hotel, and the Johnny Carson show was still on.
Yeah.
For people it was the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. You have to have been around for a while to remember that. But on there was Glenn Campbell, and Glenn Campbell sang this song, and when he gets over to his interview, Johnny Carson says, wow, what a great song. And Glenn says, yeah. He said, man, that's written by this genius down in New Orleans named Alan Toussaint. And I'm sitting there going, what? In my little hotel room watching this, and Glenn Campbell spent his entire time talking about how great Alan Toussaint was. And I'm sitting there, basically there to interview with Alan about this job. And this is almost surreal. I can't believe this is going on. And I just thought, okay, I want to be here. And they offered me a job, and I stayed on staff there for, I guess, about 4 years. And then I moved back to Memphis just for family reasons. But I still went back and forth from Memphis to New Orleans and worked with Alan, a lot. And he's kind of, well, not even kind of, definitely one of my heroes.
Yeah. Wow, that's an incredible story too.
Oh, I've been blessed, like I said. I had almost nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say, well, yes, you did because you did this, and yes, I did. But when you look at all of those things, that's just like, I think there was a little divine intervention there.
Yeah.
And I mean that sincerely.
So you've gotten to really do a whole lot of like moving around, going to like a lot of different cities to be able to do work. Was there any certain city whose music scene you particularly clicked with?
Well, the two places that I've been the most as far as like music cities were Memphis and New Orleans. And I wanted to be part of what was going on. And I was eventually, in both cities. I did a couple records in Muscle Shoals.
Okay.
And I was a huge fan of the whole Muscle Shoals, area. So again, that's another one of those things. Man, I'm just glad to be here.
Yeah.
I'm glad that somebody will pay me,
Yeah.
to come and be part of this. I probably did more records actually in New Orleans than I did anywhere else, even though I lived there fewer years than I did in Memphis. But I was just right in the middle of things. When you work for an Alan Toussaint, and there were only a very small handful of studios, when I was there. But whenever an artist, a big artist would come through, they would come to our place because, we were kind of the top dog. And I got involved and hired on sessions, not necessarily because they knew who I was, but I was Alan Toussaint's engineer. And I'm just thinking, this is great.
Yeah.
I can't believe people pay me, to do this.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'd be sitting in there for free. I'd pay to be sitting in that studio.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I would have too.
Yeah.
but I'm glad I didn't have to.
Yeah, no kidding. You got paid to be there. Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all the way on the other side of things, I feel like, did I read that you worked with Pitbull as well?
Yeah. That sounds kind of weird. I do work for the Houston rodeo. Yeah. And I always mention this to people, and they look at me like, the rodeo? Yeah. What is that? Well, if you know anything about the Houston rodeo, they have 20 concerts in a row. This year, pretty much the average size audience was 70,000 people a show. Now, you think about what I just said. 70,000. I've seen people's jaws drop, and they go, what? I said, yeah. The majority are country artists, but not all of them. And a friend of mine actually, they have a TV department. They record the concerts to multi-track, and they have a multi-camera shoot. And they make that available to the artist to buy if they want to buy it. But all of the TV department, the department that I work in, we also do the live mix for all of the video monitors. Okay. There's like a couple of clubs on the premises, and all of the private boxes have video cameras. So instead of getting the mix from the front of house, they get it from our department. And I worked there. My good buddy Malcolm Harper, that's been his gig for 25 years, I think. But sometimes he can't make it, and so I go, and I fill in for him. And then sometimes I go and I assist him. Pitbull was one of those that Malcolm had to be out of town or something for, so I did him. So I never met him. Yeah. We're not even in the same building with those people. Yeah. But I mixed the concert for TV.
Yeah. That's so insane too, to like hear, that there's so many opportunities out there too that are like that, where it's like you don't even have to meet the artist necessarily, but like, you're still able to work with such incredible talents.
Yeah, and again, that's one of those, not everybody gets to do that. Yeah. And so another one of those I'm really thankful. But this year, Pitbull, that's certainly he's unique, in his own way. And by the way, it was a great sounding show, too. I actually really enjoyed, mixing that show. But this year I worked with Chris Stapleton.
Yeah.
And
incredible talent.
Oh,
incredible.
Gosh, no kidding. And Journey.
Yeah.
The band. And I had no idea what to expect
Yeah.
from them. But wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it was...
The new singer kills it.
Yeah.
He's really good too.
And Neil Sean. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. I mean, not only is he as good as he used to be, he's probably even better.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it was a great show.
Mm-hmm. Well, Danny, it's been incredible getting to talk to you and interview you today, especially. Is there any maybe any track or song or any sort of work that you've done that you feel like maybe people wouldn't recognize right away? Like, I know I've talked to Barry before, and he pointed out that he did some stuff with Astroworld. Is there anything that you've maybe done that, like, maybe like a jingle or something a little bit more under the radar?
Oh, I did a ton of jingles, in Memphis. Let's see. When I was working with Alan Toussaint, we did one for Old English 800 malt liquor.
Oh, wow.
800.
Yeah.
And but boy, that was a long time ago. I doubt that any of that stuff, is still around. But there's lots. I've done lots of records. Some of them were successful, and a lot of them weren't. I had a number 5 record in Italy.
Wow.
On an artist named Norma Jordan, and nobody's going to know her here. Not here.
Yeah.
I had met someone who had lived in Italy, and I mentioned that record because they'd sent me this charts, but everything was written in Italian.
Yeah.
So I couldn't really understand everything about it, but it said number 5. But anyway,
yeah.
I asked this guy about this record. He said, "Oh, that was a huge record." And I went, "Oh, good."
you said that was me. Yeah.
But no, sometimes I go back and I'll listen to some of the Patti LaBelle, that I did, or Ramsey Lewis. I did an album, with him as well. But hopefully I've answered that.
Yeah.
Your question.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much once again for coming to the Bradshow. Appreciate getting to sit down and interview you, Danny. It's been incredible getting to hear some of these stories.
Oh, thanks. It's an honor. I appreciate you meeting you and being here and being interested enough to ask me all these questions.
Of course. Well, thank you so much, sir. Of course.